Hello there. So I recently discovered that there is a whole vinyl community on YouTube. Folks like me who've been collecting records for many, many years, who have their own channels and talk about the records that have influenced them, or records that are dear to them, or they go through top 10 lists of different years, different eras, etc., which is essentially the communication that I have between my friends in New York and myself on a daily basis. Given that I have this pretty large record collection, I figured maybe I should join the fray of record collectors on YouTube, sharing what they've got and why this stuff is important to them. So I figured I would start with the first few records to have an impact on me as a young kid. By way of background, there's about 1,500 records back here, plus the box sets, which you see right here. The most recent addition to this collection is the Beatles singles box set that you see up there, which my mother gave me for Christmas. That was a fantastic gift. The Modern Lovers record is on display just because that's what I was listening to right before I started this video. But let's give this a run. Let's see where it goes. I love talking about records. I love talking about music. I'm always finding new records, new, old, exchanging records with friends. It's a hobby I've had for many, many years, dating back to my early childhood. And I love that it has sort of reached the masses, which is something I would have never predicted. That vinyl records would come back with a fury in the way that they have. There are record stores everywhere. Something one day maybe I will do. But to get started, I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned, the first music to really sort of turn music from a hobby, just something that was background music or was background noise as a kid, into something that I truly loved. And right around the age of 5 or 6, I heard this song for the first time, Spirit in the Sky by Greenbaum. This is a reissue of one of his records that includes Spirit in the Sky. It was reissued in 2014. On Record Store Day, I picked it up because this song is on there. I haven't really listened to much of the rest, but I have listened to this song a number of times. My mother used to play this song when she would drive us around town, whether it be to games or to school or to the mall, things we did in New Jersey as kids. And when I was really, really young, probably again 5, 6, 7 years old, the song Spirit in the Sky came on the radio station that she listened to, which I believe was CBS 101.5, or maybe it was 101.9. And I could not get the song out of my head. I was very young, and a few days later, after asking my mom why the radio station wouldn't just keep playing that song because it was so good, I returned home from school one day and there was a 45 on my bedroom pillow. My mom had gone out to a little record store called Ramsey Books and Records, which any folks from northern New Jersey watching will probably remember. It was in the Interstate Shopping Mall, and she picked up the Greenbaum single, Spirit in the Sky, and I played it over and over and over for weeks and weeks and months and months. And I, myself and my mother, learned how much of an impact music was starting to have in my life. So next also comes from the influence of my mother. When she listened to 101.5, her version of Greenbaum's Spirit in the Sky were the Everly Brothers. This is the very best of the Everly Brothers, which I think is pretty easy. It's an original pressing, but it's pretty easy to find in a used bin in your local record store. They have reissued a bunch of their records recently on Record Store Day, and I've picked them all up because they remind me of my childhood and sort of my earliest memories of falling in love with music. When I was really young, it was probably 5 to 7 years of age. My mother, whenever the song Kathy's Clown came on, she told me that the Everly Brothers wrote that song for her, and I, of course, believed her. A few years later, maybe around the age of 10 or so, I was actually looking at the album it was either vinyl or on cassette, and I noticed that Kathy is actually spelled with a C. My mother's name is spelled with a K. So I confronted her about that and found out that it indeed was not written about her. Still shocking to this day, as I figured it was. But a great song nonetheless, and one that we still get a laugh out of every time we hear it. The Everly Brothers, unbelievable harmonies, and some of the first music that I truly fell in love with. We got 2 more left. We're gonna make this a short video. So I've talked a little bit about my mother, and a few miles away, it was literally only about 4 or 5 miles away, my father and my stepmother lived with 2 of my half-siblings. A very different sort of environment there. There was a lot of parties and a lot of music, different music, which was great. I got exposed to a lot of different sounds early on. My dad had pretty great taste. But the first one to really hit me, and that has stuck with me for my whole life, is Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run. This is an original pressing, similar to the Everly Brothers record, not hard to find, although these have been reissued. But you can find the originals in a lot of used bins across the world. This was released in 1975, the incredible cover. If you fold it out, obviously the shot with Clarence, one of the most iconic rock and roll covers ever, Bruce leaning into Clarence, who's playing the sax. And then the inside has the great sort of casual shot of Bruce with all the lyrics to Born to Run. These songs have sat with me since whatever that was, late 70s, early 80s. Jungle Land, Thunder Road, Meeting Across the River always reminds me of when my father would take me to Yankee games, since we were across the river, across the Hudson in New Jersey. Just an unbelievable record, one of the greatest ever released, and I'm gonna probably listen to this once I complete this video, because I haven't listened to it in a few weeks, and I just adore this record. Last also comes from my father's house, and this is an artist that I've sort of had sort of an up and down relationship with. As a kid, I loved his music. Got older when I became sort of a pretentious indie rock fan. Didn't consider his music to be sort of on the level of the greats. And in the last probably 10 years, I've really gotten back into his music. Really appreciate sort of the spirit of the kind of sound coming out of Detroit, which may lead you to take a quick guess as to who it is, but it's Bob Seger. This is the album Against the Wind, which has my favorite Seger song, Fire Lake, on it. Also, Against the Wind is I remember in the early 2000s going to bars in New York. We'd always go to the bars with the jukeboxes, and I'd always play Against the Wind sort of as a joke, even though I really loved it. Maybe I was just, again, I was too caught up in the seriousness of the music I was listening to at the time to enjoy, excuse me, these Seger records. But my dad played Bob Seger all the time. And I saw Bob Seger live. One of the first few shows I saw, it must have been the early 80s. And there's actually a funny story about that show. We went, I was really young. I think I was in 4th grade. I'm trying to place where this event happened. And outside of the arena, as was very common back then, still common now a lot. There were folks selling t-shirts, and I remember I wanted one really badly. My father bought me a t-shirt. I wore it to school the next day, and never really looked at what was on the front of the t-shirt. I remember I was looking at the back of the t-shirt, which had the dates of the Seger tour, but on the front was a woman with her top off on a bullet. As I remember, the name of his band at the time was Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. So I went to class in 4th grade with a t-shirt with a topless woman on it, and they sent me home. I don't know if I blame that on Seger or my dad. Probably not on Seger, since they were parking lot t-shirts and he probably did not approve of those, but pretty classic that my dad got me that t-shirt. Even more classic that I wore it to school the next day and got sent home. So how can you not love Bob Seger? So those are the 4 earliest records that really had an impression on me. If I keep doing this, I'm going to do a lot of lists. Top 10 of 2019, top 10 of 2005, top 10 of the 2000s, top 10 of something else. And I'll get into collections and other stuff, but this was inspired by my friend Norman Maslov, who you should subscribe to his channel. It is Maslov, Maslov, as in Victor. It's an awesome channel. He curates it very well. He's got a massive record collection. And I always look forward to his videos that come up about once every day or two. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you have a nice weekend.